In the days long past of the Vikings, when the boundaries between the world of humans and the supernatural were still thin, there lived in the wild mountains of Norway a witch unlike any other. Her story is one of love, of magic, and of sacrifice. A saga still told today when the moon rises over the rocky cliffs of the sea.
Her name was Ulfridr, the Wolf Beautiful, born on a stormy winter night when black clouds rolled across the northern fjords. The little girl grew up in a remote village, surrounded by forest and sea, far from the eyes of ordinary folk. Ulfridr was different from the very beginning. While other children played, she sat alone among the ruins of ancient sites, listening to winds that seemed to whisper old secrets. The villagers spoke in hushed tones about her. Some said she was a vulva, a seer. Others claimed she could speak with animals. One day, when Ulfridr was not more than 10 summers old, she became lost deep in the forest. Snow fell heavily, and the cold bit like poison into her skin. She thought this was her end, that she would never see spring again. But then, a massive gray wolf emerged from the snowstorm. Its eyes glowed silver like the moon, and its fur shimmered like frozen silk. The wolf stopped directly before the freezing child. Ulfridr should have been afraid, yet instead she felt only peace, a strange, warm peace in her dying heart. The wolf laid its mighty head beside the girl, and then the miracle happened. A magical crystal, shining like frozen moonlight, appeared in the snow before her. The wolf seized the crystal in its fangs and gently placed it into the trembling hands of the child. Warmth flooded through Ulfridr's body. The crystal glowed warm and gold, and suddenly the girl knew she would live. The wolf huffed once, a wise, almost knowing sound, then vanished back into the snowfield, never to be seen again in those form. Ulfridr was found by farmers of the nearby village. She could not explain how she had survived, but she knew that the crystalline stone she held so tightly was no ordinary rock. She knew this crystal was meant for something. She simply did not know, not yet, for what. Years passed like wind through the mountains. Ulfridr grew into a young woman, wild and beautiful, with long dark hair and eyes as green as the forest. She kept the magical crystal safe, wore it on a leather cord around her neck, hidden beneath her clothing. But the years took the luster of wonder from her memory. Ulfridr forgot the light of the crystal on that stormy night. She forgot the great gray wolf and the silk-soft warmth of its magic. She forgot what the crystal was meant to do. The stone became merely a relic of her childhood, something strange she carried always, but whose meaning had faded behind the mist of lost years. It was as if the wolf itself had veiled the memories. Perhaps it was necessary. Perhaps the time had not yet come. Yet the crystal was not passive in all those years. Slowly, subtly, it showed Ulfridr what this magical stone could do. One day, when she helped a wounded seagull, she placed her hand over the injured bird, and the light of the crystal, faint, barely visible, flowed through her fingers. The bird was healed and flew away into the sky. Another time, when a storm threatened the village, Ulfridr unconsciously grasped the crystal, and the winds suddenly stilled. The crystal glowed with warm colors. It was no accident, it was magic. Here and there, at first rare, then increasingly often, Ulfridr discovered new abilities. The crystal helped her heal sickness. The crystal helped her understand the thoughts of animals. The crystal helped her banish darkness when winter grew too harsh. Ulfridr became the wise woman of the village, not through formally learned magic like a vulva, but through a deeper, more intuitive connection with the magical stone. She was the witch, the healer, the protector. It was on a spring morning when Dagr, the famous Viking warrior, came to the village. Dagr was not like other men. His body was hard as stone, marked by 100 battles and adventures on open waters. His eyes were deep blue, like the oceans he had sailed. He wore scars like other men wear jewelry, each one a proof of his strength, his daring, his honor. Yet Dagger's heart was wounded, and it was that wound that pained him most. He came to the village because of an injury no ordinary weapon could heal, a poison given to him by an enemy on a distant, frozen island. The village healers had given up, but an old woman said, "There is only one who can help you, Ulfriðr, the witch of the forest." Ulfriðr took the wounded warrior into her home, which stood at the edge of the village where civilization turned to wilderness. She worked through the nights with the crystal, drawing the poison from his body, healing the wounds that lay above the poison. And as she worked, she began to see this rough, hardened warrior, not as a warrior, but as a human being. She saw gentleness in his eyes when he dreamed in fever. She saw strength not only in his muscles, but in his will to live. She saw in Dagger the spirit of a man who had been alone too long. Dagger healed, and as he healed, he understood something else. He understood that a woman's true strength lay not in her beauty, but in her magic. Not the magic of spells, but the magic of compassion, of healing, of love. They became lovers, not on a single day, but slowly, moment by moment, as Ulfriðr brewed him potions, as she sat beside his bed telling ancient sagas, as she laughed when he tried to understand the forest animals, as she did. And Dagger loved her as only a warrior can, with all his strength, with all his soul, with a promise that no sword, no fire, no distant island would ever separate him from her. They could have been together forever. Everything seemed to point to happiness. Dagger spoke of marriage, of a new life, far from wars and adventures. Ulfriðr dreamed of children, little girls with eyes like Dagger's ocean. But fate, that fate woven by the Norns in the days before all time, waited for its moment. It was a hunting day in high summer when Ulfriðr and Dagger walked together into the forest. The sun shone warm from the blue sky, and birds sang. Ulfriðr was happier than she had ever been. An arrow, a single arrow, shot from an invisible hand, perhaps by an enemy Dagger had not defeated, perhaps by a careless hunter who could not see. The arrow pierced her shoulder and threw her from her horse to the ground. The pain was unholy. Blood flowed warm across her skin. Ulfriðr felt her strength fade, felt the magical crystal at her chest grow cold. Dagger lifted her into his arms, carrying her through the forest, singing old warrior songs to keep her awake. But it was too late. The arrow struck too deep. The blood flowed too freely. Ulfriðr felt death knock at her door. In her final moment, as Ulfriðr's consciousness began to fade, as darkness wrapped around her, the crystal blazed with light. It shone like the sun itself. And suddenly, Ulfriðr remembered everything. In a flash of recollection, she beheld the great gray wolf from her childhood, not as a dream, but as a true memory. She finally understood. The wolf had not been an animal. It was a guardian of the old magic, a forest goddess in animal form, who gave this child a crystal to live, yes, but also to save, to protect. The crystal could not heal her. The blood flowed too quickly. The wound was too deep. But the crystal could do something else. The crystal could transform her. Ulfriðr's body began to glow. Her hair grew longer, wilder, silvery like moonlight. Her bones reshaped themselves, not painfully, but gently. Her skin became fur, the fur of a great gray wolf. Her eyes became animal eyes, glowing like the crystal itself. The dying woman became a wolf. She was not dead, she was transformed. The crystal told her this was the only way to live. The crystal told her that in this form she would exist forever, not as a human woman, but as a keeper of the forest, as the wolf witch, as the spirit of healing and protection. Dagger fell to his knees with the wolf body of Ulfriðr against his chest. He understood. Somewhere deep in his heart, he understood the magic. He understood this was not the end. It was a transformation, another way to love. The wolf licked his face, one last human gesture from a human soul. "Live," Dagger whispered. "Live forever, my love." He pulled the arrow from her fur, and though the pain was unbearable, the wolf did not bleed out. The crystal's magic healed the wound, quickly, completely. Ulfriðr was whole again. But before she could vanish completely into the wilderness, something else happened. The crystal shone once more and summoned new magic forth. A new wolf, gray as the first, silvery, glowing, appeared from the forest. It was not Ulfriðr. The magical crystal had created another wolf, a tame wolf, a companion, a gift from Ulfriðr to Dagger, a sign that her love would remain with him, at least in this way. Dagger and the new wolf, gentle, obedient, loyal, became inseparable. They hunted together, fought together, slept together. The wolf was his companion, his friend, his pet, his reminder of Ulfriðr. And each full moon night, when the moon hung large and yellow above the fjords, everything changed. The wolf companion of Dagger disappeared whenever the full moon rose. And Ulfriðr, the primal she-wolf, the wild witch, appeared on the rocky cliffs. She ran to that place where sea and mountain met, to an old stone that rose like a crowning crown above the water. And there, on the rock, the wolf's body transformed for a few precious hours back into human form. Ulfriðr, with her long black hair and green forest eyes, stood on the rock beneath the full moon. And Dagger came on his horse, leading his tame wolf companion. He dismounted. He took her hand, warm, human, real. And they held each other while the moon rose above the sea, for those few hours when the full moon shone. They spoke of their love. They danced on the rock. They remembered who they were before magic completely changed their lives. And then, when the moon stood highest, Ulfriðr transformed again, not into a wild beast, but into a gentle creature that jumped onto him and licked his face. It was not the marriage they had planned, but it was a marriage, forever, beneath the moon's watch, between a warrior and a witch, between human and animal, between life and magic.
So the old Viking stories say that Dagger lived many more years. Not young, but fulfilled, his faithful wolf at his side. And when the full moons came, he visited the rocks by the sea and held again the hand of his beloved Ulfriðr. And in those days, when a full moon shines over Norway, the villagers say one can hear a great gray wolf howl. Not wild, but mournfully and beautifully. The song of a love that stretches across life, death, and magic itself. The wolf is still there, always, on those rocks by the sea. And when the full moon rises, she becomes human again for a brief moment. She is the symbol of eternal love, of transformation, of a sacrifice greater than the laws of nature itself. She is Ulfriðr. She is the wolf witch. She is the saga that never ends.
May the Norns weave this story for all eternity, and may all who hear it understand that true love takes every form, even that of a wolf beneath the full moon.